Hey, what is up everybody? It's Animac here for Anime Uproar, and now that all 4 Knights of the Apocalypse have finally been revealed in the 7 Deadly Sins sequel, and now that an anime adaptation has been confirmed for the sequel, I thought that this would be the perfect time to talk about all 4 Knights and their insane powers and abilities. The 4 Knights of Apocalypse include the son of Meliodas and Elizabeth, the son of Bon and Elaine, the niece of King Arthur, and a guy who may or may not be the secret love child of Merlin, so let's get into it. You guys know how this works. If you enjoy our vids and you want to see more in the future, leave a quick like and comment. It only takes you a second, but it helps me out a lot with that YouTube algorithm. And of course, subscribing and hitting that notification bell is a completely free but very real way of directly supporting the channel right now. You can also hit me up on Twitter and Instagram at Anime Uproar, and a lot of you guys have been doing that already, asking me to make more 4 Knights of Apocalypse videos. Finally, this video will of course contain 4 Knights of Apocalypse manga spoilers, so please proceed with caution, you have been warned. First up, let's talk about what the 4 Knights of Apocalypse actually are, because the true nature of this group is drastically different depending on who you ask. According to King Arthur and the inhabitants of Camelot, these 4 knights are prophesied to bring doom and destruction to the world. As such, the Knights of Camelot are attempting to hunt down and eliminate each of the 4 knights before they become a threat. On the other hand, the Kingdom of Leones has a completely different view of the 4 knights. In Leones, they are often referred to as the 4 Knights of Prophecy, and they are prophesied to save the world, not to destroy it. This drastic difference between how the 4 knights are perceived in Camelot versus Leones arises from the bitter rivalry that these two kingdoms are engaged in at the beginning of the 4 Knights of the Apocalypse manga. For reasons that are yet unknown to us as of the making of this video, King Arthur changed completely between the end of the 7 Deadly Sins manga and the beginning of the sequel manga. He is now an evil king who wants to exterminate all the other races and clans except for humans. And because the Kingdom of Leones has a demon on its throne in the form of Meliodas, and also because Leones is in general tolerant of all the races, Arthur has a special interest in destroying Leones, the 7 Deadly Sins, and the 4 Knights of the Apocalypse. Our best guess as to what happened to Arthur is that he was somehow corrupted by chaos power, but that still doesn't explain a whole bunch of things, including why Merlin continues to stay by his side, seemingly enabling his actions. These big questions will definitely be answered eventually. We just have to keep reading the manga. That said, we now need to talk about all 4 members of the 4 Knights of the Apocalypse and their powers. It is important to note that at this point in the story, all 4 knights are just 16-year-old teenagers. They haven't coalesced into a formal group yet, and for the most part, they don't really know each other. They certainly don't have a common goal or mission, and they have no idea how or why they are supposed to either destroy the world or save it at some abstract point in the future. Let's start with the main protagonist of the story and the first Knight of the Apocalypse that we meet right at the very beginning of the sequel manga. I am of course talking about Percival. According to the prophecy, Percival is the Knight of Death, and he was described as a boy with verdant, wing-like hair. And yes, Percival is a boy with green, wing-shaped hair and purple eyes who looks like he's about 10 even though he's actually 16. For basically his entire life, he lived on a massive pillar-shaped mountain called God's Finger, where he was raised by his grandpa Varghese in complete isolation from the outside world. God's Finger is so tall that its tip is located above the clouds, and from the top of God's Finger, you can actually see the shadow of the Sky Island or Sky Temple, which is the home of the Celestials in the Prisoners of the Sky movie. The circumstances surrounding Percival's birth are extremely mysterious. All we know is that his father is a holy knight of Camelot named Ironside, a man who betrayed King Arthur along with his father and Percival's grandfather, Varghese. At some point, Ironside disappeared while Varghese took Percival to God's Finger and raised him alone. He also told Percival that his father was dead. Varghese trained Percival from the age of 3 to become a strong and skilled fighter. Due to the fact that he grew up in isolation, Percival is extremely curious about the outside world. And once he does finally emerge from God's Finger, he is super excited about everyone and everything that he sees. Because Percival has no experience socializing with people other than his grandpa, at first he is far too naive in his social interactions and far too trusting of strangers. Now, the event that triggered Percival's departure from God's Finger and the beginning of his adventure was the death of his grandfather at the hands of a knight in red armor who showed up on God's Finger in a floating boat. The Red Knight fatally wounded Varghese and seriously wounded Percival as well before departing God's Finger. Right before dying, Percival's grandpa reveals that the Red Knight is actually Ironside, Percival's father. Varghese had previously lied to his grandson by telling him that his father had died when he was very young. Percival desperately wants to know why his father would attack his grandfather in this way. But Varghese tells him that if he wants to learn the truth, he must track down Ironside and ask him. Varghese then succumbs to his injuries, and a heartbroken Percival departs from God's Finger, determined to bring Ironside to justice. Along the way, Percival meets some indispensable friends and allies, and he discovers that he possesses a number of incredible powers and abilities. So let's talk about those powers and abilities right now. First up, we need to talk about Percival's unique magic, which is called Hope. Hope is a type of magic that is powered by the hope of the user's allies and by the faith that the user's allies place in him. So it is literally the power of friendship, and as we all know, the power of friendship is the most powerful ability in all of anime and manga. According to Holy Knight of Camelot, Pelagard, Hope could be an extremely rare type of magic known as hero type magic, which apparently appears only in a tiny minority of people. Hope allows Percival to generate a magical aura around his body or parts of his body, and he can then manipulate this aura in many different ways. The aura allows him to defend himself by acting as a shield and reducing the damage from enemy attacks. It also enhances his own physical strength when he is the one doing the attacking, and it can even heal extremely serious injuries almost instantly. The aura can also take different shapes in order to help Percival get out of tight situations. For example, the aura can take the form of wings, which allows Percival to literally fly. This magic can even absorb the magic attacks of others and shoot them right back at the attacker, and if that wasn't enough, Percival is able to create a bunch of chibi clones of himself. These chibi clones have a will of their own, and they work tirelessly to help Percival if he is ever in trouble. The clones can also heal Percival's injuries and the injuries of his allies. Percival possesses the mysterious ability to instantly drain all the fluids out of a living being just by touching the person directly, essentially mummifying them, or at least the part of their body that Percival had come into direct contact with. Percival first demonstrated this ability when he was in a state of extraordinary agitation and despair, as he falsely believed that all of his friends had just been killed. Normal healing magic cannot reverse the effects of this strange mummification, and only Percival's own hope magic seems capable of reversing it. It goes without saying that hope magic is incredibly overpowered and versatile, with a huge number of applications on and off the battlefield. On top of his extremely rare OP magic, Percival also possesses far more strength and durability than an ordinary human. Percival seems to have enhanced resistance against drugs and other types of potions, and he has exceptional lung capacity, due in part to the fact that he grew up at a very high altitude on top of God's Finger. Now, Percival's extraordinary strength, durability, and stamina could be due to the fact that he underwent extensive physical training since he was only 3 years old, but there could also be something else going on here. For instance, Percival is able to speak the language of demons, and no one seems to know why, not even Percival. This suggests that Percival may not be just a normal human, and that he may be of a mixed race heritage. As of the making of this video, we still don't know who Percival's mother is, but I have a feeling that Merlin herself may somehow be involved with his birth. That is just speculation on my part, and I made a whole video talking about Merlin potentially being Percival's secret mother, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. Percival is also currently in possession of Meliodas' former sword, Dragon Handle, which has been repaired and turned into a fully functioning sword by Hauser. Percival is able to use hope magic to enhance the powers of the sword, and as we know, Dragon Handle is a part of the Coffin of Eternal Darkness. So the fact that Percival has it in his possession is likely to become important later on in the story. Now, let's talk about the second Knight of the Apocalypse that we meet in the story, the son of Bon and Elaine, Lancelot. According to the prophecy, Lancelot is the Knight of War, and he is described as a mysterious boy with no fixed appearance. This is because as a half-fairy, Lancelot possesses the ability to shapeshift. And in fact, when we first see Lancelot in the 4 Knights of the Apocalypse manga, we don't even know that it's him because he appears as a talking fox who goes by the name Sin. Get it? Fox is Sin? Anyway, we actually first met Lancelot in an extra chapter of the original 7 Deadly Sins manga, chapter 346.5. That chapter tells the story of how at age 10, Lancelot, along with Jericho, went missing, presumably due to the involvement of the Lady of the Lake. Lancelot returns 6 years later in the 4 Knights of the Apocalypse, but he doesn't reveal his true identity until chapter 47, when he finally assumes a human form. We learn that Lancelot is actually in the service of the King of Leonis, who is of course Meliodas. Lancelot is a sort of secret agent of Meliodas who has been tasked with locating the 4 Knights of Prophecy, aka the 4 Knights of the Apocalypse, and bringing them together in Leonis. This is why Lancelot took such an interest in Percival and why he brought him to Leonis to meet King Meliodas. Despite being an incredibly strong warrior, most people have never even heard of Lancelot. That is because he doesn't allow his opponents to survive for long enough to spread rumors about him. If anyone challenges him to a battle, it will be the last thing that he or she will ever do. That is just so freaking badass and ruthless, and to be honest, taking care of loose ends in this way makes perfect sense for a guy whose job is to essentially be a secret agent. From chapter 346.5, we know that Lancelot had exceptional physical strength, fast reflexes, and combat capabilities even as a 10-year-old. And 6 years later, all of these abilities have increased exponentially. Lancelot is a highly skilled archer, and he uses a bow and arrow with amazing speed and accuracy. As mentioned earlier, he possesses transformation magic, and it is this magic that allows him to turn into a fox. And of course, when he turns himself into a fox, he becomes a much smaller target for his opponents. On top of that, he has incredible offensive capabilities, both with his arrows and with his bare hands. He was able to instantly kill Doranok, one of the Holy Knights of Camelot, with just a single punch to the abdomen. And if that wasn't enough, Lancelot can read the minds of his opponents, an ability also known as heart reading. This is yet another useful trait that he inherited from the Fairy clan. Finally, he has a magical ability called Shining Road, which allows him to fire a beam of light at an opponent. This beam of light will then chase after its target and follow it like a heat-seeking missile until it finds it and destroys it. Next up, let's talk about Tristan, the 16-year-old son of Meliodas and Elizabeth. According to the prophecy, Tristan is the Knight of Pestilence, and he is described as a boy who has both holiness and evil in his eyes, which is a reference to the fact that he is the son of a demon and a goddess. Like Lancelot, we actually met Tristan in the original 7 Deadly Sins manga. He appears as a 10-year-old kid in chapter 346, which serves as the concluding chapter of the original manga series. Tristan appears again 6 years later in chapter 54 of the sequel manga. Tristan is the Prince of Leonis, and he has an entire order of holy knights under his command, a group of knights known as the Tristan Platoon. Prince Tristan appears to be cool-headed and benevolent, and he is well loved by his people and his subordinates. As the son of Meliodas and Elizabeth, he possessed above-average physical power and fighting capabilities since he was still a child, and he has inherited the ability to use both goddess and demon powers from his parents. He can even manifest these two completely different types of powers at the same time. And he can use a wide variety of goddess and demon abilities, including incredible healing powers. His techniques tend to have the word star in the name, such as Twinkling Star and Healing Star. He also has 2 swords that he uses in battle. One sword is black and the other is white. Interestingly enough, in one of the question corners, author Nakaba Suzuki revealed that Tristan's 2 favorite swords are named Mael and Estarossa. The 4th and final Knight of the Apocalypse is Gawain, the only female member of the group. According to the prophecy, Gawain is the Knight of Famine, and she is described as a person who possesses gold-colored magic. This gold-colored magic is none other than Sunshine, the divine grace that was originally possessed by Mael and later inherited by Escanor. Gawain somehow inherited the power after the tragic death of Escanor, and she openly calls herself the Master of the Sun. She also uses a weapon called Sacred Sword Rita, which is a direct reference to Escanor's divine axe Rita. Gawain is the niece of King Arthur Pendragon, who of course has been portrayed as the main villain of the Four Knights of the Apocalypse series, at least for now. Just like Escanor when we first meet him in his daytime form, Gawain is extremely egotistical and full of herself. She refuses to listen to orders from anyone because she believes herself to be the strongest, and so she believes that she herself should be giving out all the orders. She also refuses to consider herself as being in the same league as the other three Knights of Prophecy, since she sees herself as superior to all of them. Thanks to the power of Sunshine, Gawain has unbelievable physical power, and she likes to dominate her enemies using brute force. However, her moves are very basic and predictable, which proves that despite her awesome power, she is still an amateur when it comes to combat. An experienced Holy Knight with superior fighting techniques can still defeat her, which is exactly what Holy Knight of Camelot Pelagard does. Needless to say, Gawain is nowhere near the level that Escanor was when we first met him, because there's just no way on earth that daytime Escanor would have lost to a single Holy Knight in battle. After she loses to Pelagard, Gawain throws a childish tantrum and she refuses to accept the reality of the situation. Tristan is able to calm her down by showering her with a bunch of compliments, some of which were outright lies. So, despite possessing Sunshine, daytime Gawain is still a cocky, spoiled brat with a lot of work to do before she can match the kind of power that Escanor once wielded. She's also nowhere near as cool as Escanor was, and her one-liners can't even compare to the true Master of the Sun. On top of Sunshine, Gawain also has other overpowered magical abilities. She is able to use strong spells like Absolute Cancel to cancel out a perfect cube, and she can also use advanced teleportation magic to instantly teleport from one spot to another. This suggests that Gawain may have had some contact with Merlin in the past, especially since we know that she is directly related to King Arthur. Gawain may have even trained under Merlin at some point, although this is yet to be confirmed. Despite her family connection to King Arthur and Camelot, Gawain doesn't appear to be loyal to Camelot, and in fact, Tristan believes that she will fight on the side of Leonis against the forces of King Arthur. And that is it. All four Knights of the Apocalypse and their powers explained, at least in terms of everything that we know so far. The Four Knights of the Apocalypse manga is still relatively new, but I'll be sure to keep you guys informed about all the important future updates as long as you click subscribe and hit that notification bell right now. You can also drop a like and comment to help this video with that YouTube algorithm. Feel free to follow me on Twitter and Instagram at AnimeUproar, and definitely let me know how you're enjoying the manga so far. I want to give a big thank you to all of our Anime Uproar patrons for making videos like this one possible. Special thank you to Kyle Salisbury. This man is an absolute mad lad and a disciple of Lord Twigo himself. And I can't forget all of our The One tier patrons, the ones who rise above all other clans, including Alpha Sigma, Pate Hefa, the Red-Haired Fox, Hinokami and Water, the Toasted Chi, Cory McGowan, the Fallen Chosen, Orihime Wukong, Dante Tennell, and Baked Buddhist. Finally, thank you also to our Pro Hero tier patrons, including the one and only Gilgamesh, Angel Cruz, Alicia Octor, Bunny Parks, Fatboy Games, Kaido Might Be a Duck, Ali Vania, and Anime S Code M. If you guys enjoy our videos and you feel that they provide value to you, consider supporting us on Patreon. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, see ya, Space Cowboys!